What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be reviewing more fashion shows from Spring Summer 2023. So basically this video is part 3, and in case you wanna check out part 1 and part 2 as well, you can do it right there. Again, today we have 5 menswear shows and my picks are super interesting designers and brands such as KENZO, LOEWE, DRIES NOTEN, ETRO and DOLCE and GABBANA. Alright, let's jump right into the review. First show we are gonna check out is KENZO. Creative director Nigo presented his second collection as part of the Men's Fashion Week in Paris. Looks like the collection takes inspiration from Nigo's own discovery of KENZO. He founded photos in the archives of 80s KENZO show that resembled a school sports day. So he went ahead and hung college pennants from the roof and installed stadium seats in the gymnasium at a high school in Paris. Not surprisingly, collection was reminiscent of a graduation ceremony or first day at a school of some kind. In my opinion, the whole vibe of Nigo's collection was a lot like cool kids dressed to impress. It was also highly inspired by sailor wear and workwear. Basically, it was a mashup of school uniforms, sailor clothing and workwear. Not surprisingly, the overall collection looked like French fashion mixed with Japanese, and plus a touch of American aesthetics, as we saw in terms of American workwear. As Nigo said after the show, he wanted to remember those times when French fashion was at the peak of popularity in Japan, and local designers tried to introduce it into traditional local clothes. Collection trademark piece was probably poppy flower motif, which the designer used as a brooch and embroidery. Also, many of the looks were complemented by classic French berets with the K-shaped logo. Main highlights of the show were naval uniforms and suits. Again, we have here a connection between French and Japanese fashion. Another highlight of the collection was denim, which did not surprise me at all, because, as you may know, denim is a Nigo's forte. Alright, in my opinion, it was a great collection that gravitated also towards safer side. Typical to KENZO, we saw many interesting connections that the collection was produced by a French house and conceived by a Japanese designer. On the bad side, the main message of the collection and probably also target audience was a bit confusing and not clear. Creative director Jonathan Anderson presents his Spring-Summer 2023 collection for LOEWE that was inspired by nature and technology. As he put it, a fusion of the organic and the fabricated. The designer laid out a sloping white set where the models emerged backlit over the horizon. On this one, Anderson collaborated with a Spanish fashion designer who has been experimenting with growing plants on fabrics and shoes, and that can be seen clearly looking at models wearing sneakers covered with grass. Overall, the show was packed with tech accessories. We saw faces of models covered by LCD screens that displayed buzzing bees or screensaver fireworks. Anderson explained, "In a weird way, we are becoming the screen somehow," describing how people sit in cafes glued to their devices and oblivious to their real-life surroundings. According to Anderson, it's the idea how nature can lead technology or technology can lead nature. Alright, so Anderson's collection featured bare legs and running tights, all heavily branded. In terms of color, the palette was very nature-centric. Knits were heavily textured, reminiscent of the foam that grows on trees. Shirts and trousers were heavily creased, probably reminiscent of the T-bar texture. Towards the end of the show, massive digital screens appear on coats, displaying the deep sea and its inhabitants. In a nutshell, LOEWE collection tried to prove that there is no better witnesses of our times than nature and technology. It focused on the idea of awareness and freedom, challenging us to be more present and find ways to coexist better with our beautiful nature. Even though Anderson's connection to nature was nothing new, we can still say that the show was one of the most meaningful of the season. DRIES van Noten presents Spring-Summer 2023 menswear collection at Paris Fashion Week. The show took place on the rooftop of parking garage. DRIES van Noten said he'd been researching male subcultures for inspiration this season, particularly the Zazu movement in Paris in the 40s and Buffalo in London in the 80s. The Zazus were underground rebels who dressed loudly, frequented bars and jazz clubs, and defined the Nazi occupation of Paris. Buffalo was the subversive British-style movement founded by Ray Petrie in the time of Margaret Thatcher. By doing that, DRIES van Noten examined the fashion's ever-changing landscape and celebrated its power to forge connections in unexpected and unusual ways. DRIES explored and reimagined different archetypes of men, such as night dandy, cowboy, garage scene grifter, and sleepy daydreamer. Not surprisingly, clothing from distinct subcategories entered the mix. Industrial club pants, embroidered western shirts, and cowboy boots, varsity sweaters, etc. The designer also experimented with motocross trend that's been gaining much attention lately. DRIES done it as a part of elevated sportswear, for instance, hybrid biker/track pants, nylon cargo jackets, shorts, etc. Probably the main trademark of the collection was pinstripe tailoring that we saw extensively in the collection. DRIES also examined gender fluidity in his collection. Even though his collection was apparently based on a traditional idea of menswear, still we saw interesting pieces such as minimal tanks and body corsets. DRIES explained this as masculine-feminine. Interesting element to pay attention here is that DRIES van Noten logos are cut in half. DRIES said that this has a thumb in the eye to the logomania rampant in fashion. Other words like lorem ipsum in big letters also appeared on clothes, sometimes patchworked with leopard prints and graphic botanicals. Lorem ipsum, he explained, referring to the nonsensical text graphic designers use as a placeholder until the actual copy arrives. By doing so, DRIES left this open to interpretation. Overall, what a great collection. In my opinion, it was DRIES van Noten at his simple, elegant best. This collection also nodded to emerging trends that we've been seeing lately, such as pinstripes, ties, and elevated sportswear. ETRO presented its Spring-Summer 2023 collection at Milan Fashion Week. Titled as Wild Power of Poetry, the collection was inspired by KENZO's love of literature and poetry. Instead of invitations, he had actors phone each of the guests to recite a dedicated poem to each one of them. It was a special way to say goodbye, as the show marks the last solo collection for ETRO. He will be passing the ETRO crown to Marco Di Vincenzo, who will take the lead as creative director from September. As ETRO explained, poetry and utopia go hand in hand. As he said, poetry simply means making and composing, and he wanted to give value to the idea of creating, which should not be separated from utopia because there is no progress in society without one. Well, there was not much utopia in this sensual collection. Rather, we saw gentle masculinity filtered through ETRO's sentimental eye. Main highlights of the collection probably were see-through tops, chiffon kaftans and satin kimonos, all worn open, revealing nude skin. All these transparencies and breezy volumes also nodded to the brand's nomadic roots. The botanical theme was indeed dominant in the collection. Relaxed tailoring, elongated shirts, kimonos and kaftans were all adorned with floral patterns in various shapes and forms that reinforced that breezy and bohemian feeling of the collection. On the footwear side, models walked barefoot, this probably to feel more connected with earth. Others wore sandals and espadrilles. Alright, in my opinion, it was a great collection to say goodbye. Interesting to see that we did not observe any nostalgic vibes. That is something everyone would have expected from the show. As mentioned already, Marco Di Vincenzo is gonna replace King ETRO. As King explained himself, Marco is really fond of history of ETRO and he's going to disrupt it a bit because everyone expects to see a change. Time to write a new chapter. Last but not least, let's check out Dolce & Gabbana Spring-Summer 2023 menswear collection. Domenico and Stefano called this collection re-edition. Designers looked to its archives to find some of their most iconic looks from the 90s and 2000s. They took these pieces and gave them a fresh and new context. These same pieces are assembled with new items to create and define a modern-day male silhouette. Each piece features a dedicated label, re-edition, that includes both inscriptions, one for the original season and another one for the current Spring-Summer 23. So this collection is dedicated to the heritage of the brand. It demonstrates the idea of building modernity from the past, a past that also feels contemporary and unique. Alright, looking at the collection, big part of it was dominated by distressed clothing, particularly denim. The collection was packed with ripped denim pants, heavily embellished blazers, and see-through black tops. If you like distressed clothing, you love this collection. As it progressed, we saw more distressed pieces, t-shirts, hoodies, you name it. Also, we saw perfectly tailored tuxedos and double-breasted blazers, biker jackets, and many more. So, pretty diverse and long collection. It sported around 89 looks. According to designers, this collection still looked plausible and fresh, showing incredible longevity and relevance with what young generations want to wear today. So it's also a desirable and wearable option for vintage crazy Gen Zs. As Domenico explained, they are hungry for real fashion, while today there are just logos everywhere. Alright, worth to mentioning that several looks in the collection were a tribute to David Beckham, a longtime muse to the designer's vision of menswear. As Stefano said, Beckham was the first in the late 90s who crossed the boundaries and introduced real glamour into menswear. Alright, did you guys like the collection? Well, probably you certainly did if you are into distressed clothing. Overall, nice collection. Interesting to see that majority of those old pieces still relevant. So Dolce & Gabbana's long-lasting appeal does not look like disappearing anytime soon. Alright, so that was it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.